loss as a goal has been very elusive or a sustainable goal. But on top of it, it really creates a chore relationship with what we're doing. For many people, it inherently means I'm not good enough as I am. I have to escape myself through losing weight. And when I was focused on how to help people create a sustainable approach to exercising, it became very clear both through working with individuals in my coaching program, but also through my research, that exercising in order to lose weight was just a lose proposition. It led people to start and stop and start and stop, but not sustain. And I've always encouraged people to focus on how they feel from their decisions. And yeah, eating a bag of potato chips might taste better in the moment than whatever else that might be healthier. What do you feel 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later?
Hi there, Health Feast listeners. Dr. Rak here. And today on the Health Feast, I'm super excited. Po and I are welcoming Dr. Michelle Segar. Literally a dream of mine to have her on the show. Michelle is a leading expert in the science of motivation and sustainable health behaviors. She's an award-winning NIH-funded researcher at the University of Michigan with 30 years of studying how to help people adopt healthier behaviors in ways that can be sustained within the unpredictability of the real world. Dr. Segar's contributions, including her roles with the World Health Organization and the U.S. National Physical Activity Plan, have been pivotal in redefining public health strategies. Her books, No Sweat, and more recently, The Joy Choice, present groundbreaking approaches to overcoming the all-or-nothing mindset that often hinders lasting health changes. Both of these books are practical guides that are reshaping health coaching and fitness training worldwide. My own journey with Michelle's work began in 2018 when I was attending a lifestyle medicine conference where she gave the keynote address. Her fresh perspective on exercise, not as a chore, but as a cherished gift, was a genuine revelation, a light bulb moment, my friends. That moment changed how I approach not just exercise, but all aspects of health behavior. Indeed, Michelle's work was in fact a big inspiration for the name of this show, The Health Feast. A reminder that good health can and should be joyous, communal, and an abundant experience. In today's episode, Michelle takes us through her groundbreaking research and highlights why seeing exercise as a joyful activity can profoundly impact our willingness to engage. She explains why traditional motivators used in healthcare often fail us and how immediate rewards can be far more motivating. During our conversation, we discuss The Joy Choice, both the name of her recent book and a concept that offers a powerful antidote to that all-or-nothing thinking that so often derails our health behaviors. It's all about making flexible, in-the-moment decisions that align with our broader intentions for health, without feeling like we failed when life gets in the way. We furthermore dive into the psychological drivers of motivation, and we explore how understanding our executive functioning and our ability to make choices can enhance our commitment to health. Michelle envisions a future where health behaviors are guided by our intrinsic values, making wellness both more personal and universally accessible. We also consider the unseen forces shaping our health decisions daily, like the layout of our environments and societal expectations, and how understanding these forces can lead to better health outcomes. Michelle's expertise sheds light on how we can navigate these forces to support healthier living for all. This episode is about the science of motivation and so much more. It's a comprehensive look at the art of thriving. Through Michelle's lens, we explore how embracing flexibility and seeking joy in our health routines can lead to a richer and more satisfying life. So, whether you're on a walk, on your commute, maybe you're just cozying up in bed, this conversation is a perfect way to discover how you can infuse your health journey with more energy, more well-being, and more success. without further ado, let's do the show. Such a pleasure to have you here at the Health Feast. And I sent her like a message through her website. And I always wonder, are people actually reading these when you do this form? And here you are. So this is a dream come true manifestation. And we introduced you before the conversation started, but I just wanted to share kind of the first time I met you. I didn't really meet you, actually. I should have. I saw you speak. I think it was in 2017. So you may or may not remember, because you probably do a lot of events, but it was in Berkeley, California. It was for the Permanente Medical Group. We had a lifestyle medicine like summit, and you were our keynote speaker that day. And Po, I went into talk not knowing who Dr. Segar was, and also not knowing that I had the completely wrong mindset and frame shift about movement and exercise. Seriously, I think my whole life I had looked at movement, and as we'll talk about, as a chore. And Po and I have talked about this on the show. Certainly, Po, you've said it yourself. Without even reading your book, Michelle, we have had these conversations, and Po has said, yeah, there's a tendency, like running on a treadmill feels like a chore. And when you said that, it was like, I often share, right when I came home from that, I was like telling my wife about it. I wrote some like article to my department about your session and how I was working in the hospital, and I was like, everybody needs to know this. Like, this is how because I said, now that I am exercising regularly, back then I had started maybe 6 months before that. I said, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it feels good. I'm doing it because I've made friends at the gym I'm going to. I'm doing it. And so anyway, and then I emailed everyone in the gym. I was like, you have to learn about. So anyway, I'm a little ecstatic for that reason, because the title of the show, The Health Feast, comes from the idea that something that is good and healthy should and can feel indulgent, like a feast. And so it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that my work resonates with you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And Po and I have been doing this show for about a year, and that's the thing we highlight. We highlight, what is it, the person who's coming on, we had someone coming on about parenting, or someone coming in on being organized, how it actually is an opportunity to feel good. All those things are an opportunity to feel good. So I'm excited to get into that. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your journey? I remember hearing when you introduced yourself at that summit, like your path was so circuitous, like you did so many sort of different things that now probably all make sense. But along the way, it seemed, as it often does, like, where am I going?
When I decided to start graduate school and get a master's in kinesiology, I did not even know what the word kinesiology meant, but I knew that I was interested in studying physical activity as a potential vehicle for empowerment. So I was fortunate to work with a mentor who helped me get a grant for my master's thesis. And we did a randomized control trial. Actually, it was a crossover trial, but I'm not going to go into those details, to study whether cancer survivors who exercised compared to a group that didn't exercise, whether there's some psychological outcomes like depressive and anxiety symptomatology would improve. And we hypothesized that these outcomes would improve from exercise. And we found that they did, which I thought was the end of the story. Fortunately, one of my other mentors said, Michelle, let's build in some focus groups. Let's follow up with people in our study about 3 months later. And we brought people back. We gave them the questionnaires again, but really the point of interest of the focus groups was to talk to people and find out what was going on with them, with exercising and other things. And I remember early on in the groups, and we conducted a bunch of focus groups, hearing people talk, smiling about exercise, and assuming that we hadn't just done really good research, but that we actually helped these people in real life. But I found out I was wrong because almost everyone stopped exercising when our study had ended 3 months before. And the most logical question to ask is why? Why did you stop exercising? And they said, I'm so busy. I have a job. I have a family. I have aging parents. I have this, that, and the other. And what became very clear to me in those focus groups was that these people had not stopped exercising because they were cancer survivors. They had stopped exercising because they were simply busy adults living their lives. Now, I neglected to mention that these participants were 4.5 years after cancer treatment. So they were not active patients undergoing treatment for the most part. And I thought, if people who faced a life-threatening illness like cancer didn't have the requisite mindset and skill set to sustain a self-care behavior like exercise, then we had a real problem in society. And actually, I didn't even realize it until I was about to get on today, but those focus groups happened in February 1994. So literally 30 years from this month. And when I realized it was a problem, I had this light bulb go off in my brain and it said, this is my problem and I'm going to solve it. Solving the puzzle of sustainable behavior change has been my path. And you talked about as being circuitous. I don't see it that way because I went and got a master's in behavioral health education. I designed a curriculum and methodology to deliver an intervention to create sustainable physical activity and self-care. And then I got a PhD focused on motivational processes in the self to just really come full circle. And what do I need to know to really understand what is everything that gets in people's way? And a lot of people think a lot of the things that get in their way are outside of themselves. It could be bad weather. It could be many different things, other people, schedules. But what I found over the years is that the biggest challenges people have really are just the beliefs they have about a behavior like physical activity. So that's a long story of how I got here.
Wow. Po, you're nodding your head.
I had just a couple things to say. Like, number one, I think you're the person I want to talk to today because I'm one of those people. Like, I've had the opportunity to live a more healthier lifestyle due to like exercise, understanding the way to eat, understanding how to eat better and take care of my health. And I feel like I'm always going back to square one again, like multiple times. And I think after that question, my second question to that, which is different, but I want to know, was this something that you always wanted to look into when you were a young person? Like, what inspired you? Because usually people find that thing that they're really good at, and then they just stick with it. And that's what they draw from, a certain experience that happened when they were young that sort of pulled them when it's tough and hard classes. You find that like North Star that keeps you on this path, because it seems like you dedicated your life to this in a way, just based on what you're saying. So they're two separate questions, but I guess I want to know like your origin story, like what was the inspiration behind sticking to this sort of field? And then the second part would be, how do you like stop starting over and over again? What kind of behaviors do I need to, because I feel like I've had lots of opportunity to, anyway, so I'd like to see what you say to that. Yeah.
Sure. The first question is something that I only recognized maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that when I was 12, I had decided that I was going to become a cult deprogrammer. So back in those days, there were a lot of cults and people were getting in them and they were stuck in them. And I really wanted to rescue people from the brainwashing that they had. And the funny thing is that really my work is all about deprogramming people from the cultural messages we've received about exercising and healthy eating and all of that. And I've always been interested in motivation. So I didn't seek out really like my PhD is in motivational processes, but when I went into the program, I wasn't thinking about, oh, gee, when I was in high school, I was really interested in motivation. So I feel like my path found me. It feels very purpose driven, and it's a puzzle. And I design behavior change curriculum. So how do we design something not only so that it's effective, but so that people resonate with it? A behavior change approach cannot be effective if it doesn't deeply resonate and engage individuals. And so solving that puzzle, whether it's creating the content for a keynote or designing actually a behavior change curriculum that can be delivered to patients, it's a creative puzzle. So that's why I guess I probably stuck with it. It's just something I'm passionate about and I enjoy. Now, your first question, it's a very common issue that people start and stop and start and stop and don't sustain. Now, you're not saying to me, Michelle, I don't sustain. You're just saying that you find yourself stopping a lot. And did I understand you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The way that I think about this is stopping is a normal part of living. So we ebb and flow in all areas of our lives. Sometimes our kids are in school and sometimes they're not. Sometimes our marriages feel awesome and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we feel really happy and joyful and sometimes we don't. Life has ups and downs. And when it comes to non-exercise, non-eating parts of our lives, we just accept the fact that there's going to be ebb and flow. And when someday we can't do it perfectly, we do what we can and we just take it for granted and we don't judge ourselves and we don't feel like failures. But when it comes to our eating and exercise, there's this moralistic expectation that we have to do it the same way. We have to do it right. There is a wrong. And I would say that those beliefs create all or nothing thinking, which really get in people's way. So what I find when people can't consistently stick with something and consistently not do the same thing every time, but just have a bit of a momentum, is because what they're doing is too ambitious for their current life context. So if someone was trying to get to the gym Monday through Friday for either 30 minutes or 60 minutes, however long, and they just find that they can't keep going longer than a week or two or three, it means that plan is not the appropriate plan under the circumstances. Or my second book, The Joy Choice, what that was all about was teaching people how to develop choice resilience so that if you did have a plan to go to the gym Monday through Friday for an hour, you would learn that on any given day, if you can't do what you would hope to do, there's always this perfect, imperfect option, what I call the joy choice, that you can pick. And it might be going to the gym for 10 minutes or not going to the gym, but dancing with your family after dinner or before dinner or taking a walk around the block. And again, in life, we expect that we have to change things up and pivot. But with exercise and eating, we've been brainwashed that it has to be perfect. And that creates all or nothing thinking, which really gets in people's way.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that, because I think plenty of times in my life when I look back on my journey with health and fitness, it's like you do get into a zone. I think it's like you said it, you culturally programmed, you just subscribe to that thinking. And even when you have the ability to say, let's change it into thinking, like you said, instead of going to the gym for 10 minutes, supplement it with, if you're active at home, dancing with your relatives or whatever, that's also a way of doing the same thing, but in another way. The thing is, does having a support system that also believes in that help too?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So people would encourage you to do something different. When I was writing The Joy Choice, just so intense, no time, running up against a deadline. And after dinner, I said to my husband and teenage son, could we take a walk around the block? And we're a couple houses away from our house. And all of a sudden, my teenage son looks at me and says, Mom, is this a joy choice for you? Because it wasn't our typical thing that we did. And I'm like, yes. And so, but in addition to having that support, you can create it. My son, a teenager, learned from hearing me talk that this is an option. And I would say that you can create these supportive networks through educating them about this new way of thinking, and then even asking for their encouragement or something. It's really, when you think about the fact that almost every other area of our lives, this is how we live organically. But when it comes to exercise and eating, it's like we have to do it right. I think part of the reason, and I think you'll appreciate this in healthcare, is that the value of exercise and nutrition has literally evolved out of millions, upwards of billions of dollars of government-funded research that is very prescriptive in origin. So when people get funded to do research from the NIH, for example, you have to propose a simple study that is going to measure in very precise ways certain inputs, how much people exercise, how intensely they do it, or how many ounces of this they're going to drink, whatever it is, and outputs or outcomes. How much did blood levels of this change or that? And so then that research gets reported in the media, and it's very prescriptive. You need to do this to get this. But that is only because, so people start thinking in a prescriptive way. I've got to exercise for 40 minutes. I have to exercise for 60 minutes. I have to eat 9 fruits and vegetables a day, whatever it is. And that need for prescription really can create standards that are so high that we just can't do it every day. And if you can't do it on a day, it feels like a fail. And you stop. So if instead we had a more flexible perspective, now I think it's important to say, I do think planning is important. If we don't plan things, life takes over. If we don't plan what we're going to get in the grocery store, we don't eat those types of foods. So planning is important. But if we don't have an equal dose of flexibility, then we can't be resilient with our decision making when life necessitates resilience. And then we don't do anything.
My big takeaway from just what you're saying now, and also when I read The Joy Choice, was there are certain things in life that we value. And one of my values is like being healthy, like honoring my health and being healthy. And it stands aside so many other values, like connecting with people. Yes. And having a life that is meaningful is so much more than sticking to a prescribed way of eating or sticking to. And if one of your values is health, like I think the other thing I took and take from you is how much curiosity you bring into this process. Mm-hmm. Of instead of saying, oh, I have to do X, Y, or Z, and I can't do it. The all or nothing thinking. It's, oh, today's a really busy day, and I really want to get some movement in. And just like your son recognized what you were doing in that moment, that's just a beautiful example. Like you were like, I want to get movement in, and I want to connect with my son. And like, how can I respect those values? And so I think the first step for most people is actually reflecting on what are your values.
Absolutely. And what are your beliefs, especially about health, and how do they align with or conflict with these other things? Now, less than a year ago, a big study came out by the very famous social psychologist, Robert Vallerand, and he studies passion, like unhealthy passion and healthy passion. And he, in his latter part of his program of research, started studying the tactics people use with these different types of passions to achieve their goals. And in this paper that was published, and I think it had a very large total sample of three or 6,000 people, maybe it's 3,000 across 6 studies. And they found that when people take a more flexible approach, that it's compared to people who take a rigid approach to achieving some type of focus goal, whether it's health or professional or whatever, that it is the people who have a more flexible approach who also have greater thriving in their life. Because what the flexible approach does is it helps you create harmony between your health goals and these other values in your life. If you're like this and you have to hit the bullseye no matter what, then these other needs out here, whether it's a child who comes home from school and is just very down about something and taking the time to talk to them about it, or a friend who really needs a shoulder to lean on, or whatever it is, or they need an extra volunteer at a place of worship. When you have a more flexible approach, you inherently appreciate the need for a harmony among your different valued roles and responsibilities.
I really like that, because when you were saying earlier about when the studies come out, for the regular, I would consider myself like, I don't know about the studies. You, the experts, know about these studies, right? And it's almost like they don't talk about the fine print that comes with these studies to the general population.
That's right.
There's all this information that comes out, and they only give us the results, but they don't talk about the outside of the study effects of this. So I like how you're saying that if you view your health in a flexible way versus this sort of results driven laser, if you eat broccoli every day for 30 days, you're going to lose 10 pounds. But that's hard to do. That in reality, that's a very difficult thing to do for some people. And they don't talk about if you incorporate it, if you make it in different types of dishes, like change it up. There's just all this other stuff that could happen to help someone achieve that goal of whether that's just eating more plant-based or eating more vegetables. What I'm getting from you is that I like the fact that he called it the joy choice, because it's almost like removing the lens of win or loss or success or failure and just saying it's okay. And do you think that has a lot to do with the cult-like thinking and then like the marketing of all these different programs, whether it's keto, it's this, they're not, and it's to market that to the general population. And then we believe it, like we consume it. We're like, yeah, if we just eat meat and we're going to lose weight, but they're not talking about all the other stuff that comes with it, that comes with just a specific type of diet. Or because even with workout programs, like there's all these, if you're doing CrossFit, or there's all these different workout styles that like, if you do it for X amount of time, there's nothing bad with it because you're getting fit. But I feel like with our conversation today, what I'm learning is it's like a flexible mind, a growth mindset with a little bit of flexible mindset, looking at your health as more holistic versus I need to lose 10 pounds in X amount of time.
You're pointing to a concept that you heard me talk about in 2017, which is the wrong why. And there's been an overemphasis, again, because of the way the value of healthy eating and exercise has evolved. It's come out of a value of weight loss. And it's not that there's anything wrong with weight loss, except the whole drug is a whole different conversation that we don't have to go into. But on a behavioral level, we haven't as a society known how to help people lose weight so that they would keep it off. So weight loss as a goal has been very elusive or a sustainable goal. But on top of it, it really creates a chore relationship with what we're doing. For many people, it inherently means I'm not good enough as I am. I have to escape myself through losing weight. And when I was focused on how to help people create a sustainable approach to exercising, it became very clear both through working with individuals in my coaching program, but also through my research, that exercising in order to lose weight was just a lose-lose proposition. It led people to start and stop and start and stop, but not sustain. And I've always encouraged people to focus on how they feel from their decisions. And yeah, eating a bag of potato chips might taste better in the moment than whatever else that might be healthier. How do you feel 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later? Judson Brewer, I'm a big fan of his, and he's studied a lot about breaking unhealthy habits. And I was really happy to hear that someone who's researched very different types of health behaviors than I've researched really has the same conclusion. And that is, in order to help people change their behavior in ways that are sustainable, you have to give people permission to notice how they feel, what their cravings feel like. How do they feel when they exercise in this way or that way? He did studies where he helped smokers notice their cravings. And you'd think, boy, when you notice your cravings, you're really in for trouble. You heighten the awareness of cravings. It's the opposite. When smokers really become aware and ride the waves of the craves, it helps people, this mindfulness helps people not let them take over. And so it's, whether we're talking about taking away a behavior like Brewer studies or adding a behavior like I study, it's about how the choices make us feel. And then our brain learns to value the choices that make us feel the best. And that's how we get our brain hooked into this new behavior.
That's it. Yeah. You talk about the wrong why. And I remember when you said that, because I said, I'm part of the problem. What was I doing with patients? I was telling them your blood pressure's high. And so I wasn't saying you need to lose weight or in that way, like exercise. Well, first of all, exercise isn't like a really good strategy for losing weight. But beyond that, I was saying all the other things, though. I was saying, like, it's good for you. You're less likely to die of heart disease. And all these things are true. And when you said that, I really had to introspect and say, okay, my goal is to get them to move more. And basically saying those things is solidifying that it's a chore for them.
Right. It's logical that you would say this.
That's what we're taught.
You were taught to do it. There is a logic to it, but there's a fine line, because in healthcare, the goal is to help patients improve their health, reduce healthcare costs. But in order to help patients and people more generally adopt behaviors in sustainable ways, I always say in sustainable ways because that's all I care about. Let's stop talking about behavior change. We are very successful at getting the population to change their behavior again and again. We need to focus on how do we approach these issues if we want them to sustain the change. Because think about it. Every time you buy into an exercise program or join a gym or pay for a food plan or a membership, whatever it is, you're putting out money, or a system is putting out money, or a health insurance company is putting out money. And then someone does it for 2 weeks, 2 months, and they stop until the next time an investment is made. There is no ROI in that situation. It's a waste of money. But what if instead we invested in systems that wouldn't just get people to start, but would actually keep them going and sustaining? That's where the ROI happens. And the way to get there is to refocus on how you feel. I'm part of a research team at the University of Michigan, and we've developed an app to reduce colon cancer. And in the design of this app and coaching support that comes with it was very important that we not talk about weight at all. Now, we know some people, and maybe many, joined our program to lose weight, but we were very clear that if we were going to successfully lead our study participants to sustain this new way of eating, then we were going to have to change the way that they thought about eating in this new way, in this quote unhealthier way. I don't even like to use the term healthier eating, because I think that can lead to a chore-based thinking too. So we are asking them, how do you feel? Like, how does it make you feel when you eat this compared to what you might have eaten before? And we teach them phrases like, are trading up. That was a concept that came to us when we were writing our participant manual. Like, how can we talk about eating in healthier ways that's going to be more compelling than healthier ways? If you're trading up to something, you're branding that something is better and teaching them to think about making progress instead of being perfect. And we're finding that the participants are internalizing these new messages and new beliefs so that they're saying it back to us. So in healthcare, when you're talking to a patient, when you start talking in this new way, and ideally there would be a system in place where, all of the clinicians were using the same language so that it was reinforcing the same science-based ideas. I'll stop talking. I want to say one other thing, that is our whole approach to promoting lifestyles like exercising more and eating in certain ways for health and as medicine. That is not a science-based promotional strategy. It's a convention. I think that's when you think about how evidence-based healthcare is and needs to be for reimbursement, imagine that our whole approach to promoting healthy lifestyles is absolutely based on convention instead of science. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's convention and it's culture.
Yes.
You're taking a paradigm, which is something Western medicine has basically said, like, we diagnose and then we treat. And what do we treat with? We either treat with a medication. And what you're saying is actually, it's really blowing my mind, because I'm part of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We have big initiatives, like our central initiatives are food is medicine, exercise is medicine. And in doing that, we are, I think, ascribing to the convention. And we're just as same as any other specialty. Like, we're we're playing by the rules. We're just using different medicine. I wonder if that's like actually what's holding part of that movement back, like you're saying, because you're to public facing, to the people who actually need to make the change. You're saying, like, come, instead of taking a pill, come do these chores that are really good for you. Yes. That's basically what we're broadcasting.
The strategy behind it. Yeah, the methods.
Wow.
That is.
So the other thing there's two things I want to say. One is, and I know food is medicine is a huge movement.
Yeah.
And exercise is medicine is a really big movement. And the way that I've talked to the exercise researchers in healthcare about this for years is to promote exercise. So we know that the majority of people, it's not true in closed systems like Kaiser and Intermountain Health, where exercise is a vitality sign. And so it's assessed. But in the rest of the United States, most clinicians don't assess physical activity. They may not have been trained to do it. They may not think it's as valuable as other things. They don't have time to do it. So to try to hook the healthcare community clinicians in the medicinal value of exercise, which it certainly has, we need to hook the clinicians with what they care about, which is medicine. But two things. Number one, we are using an analogy that the original version of medication adherence doesn't actually work, right? Most patients don't adhere to their medications. So why would we create a metaphor for exercise for a situation that isn't successful from the get-go? But the other thing that is, and this is where there's a tension, and I'm challenged by this, and I talk to people that are doing the policy work to get physical activity counseling to be covered across healthcare systems. And there's this tension between it needing to be about health, but needing a second level communication tactic for the patient who's a consumer. So we among ourselves can talk about exercise as medicine within our staff meetings, within our health systems, in the closed system. But when we talk to our patients, let's use evidence-based communication tactics. And guess what those are? That we need patients to know that it should feel good, that they should move in ways that if they're not pleasurable or positive, at least they're not punishing. Again, let's take a step back and think about where else we do this. Companies have internal conversations all the time, but when they market to their consumers, it's a very different message. When parents talk amongst ourselves, about our children, we might use different language when we're trying to relay that to our children. And it's not being patronizing. It's being a smart marketer of ideas.
It reminds me of Febreze, the air freshener.
Yes.
They did this for their marketing, what they learned. And Febreze, when it first came out, apparently didn't sell well. They were selling it on the premise that you can spray it on things and it'll make it smell nice. And it maybe in between laundry, really the task behind it and when they shifted to basically a marketing campaign where somebody walks into a room and takes a big breath of fresh air and feels this sigh of relief. You can see the look on her face. Oh, it smells so good. She's just elated. Their sales skyrocketed. That's what people connect with. And you're right. The big companies know this. And we would benefit from, and I think this is part of your crusade. I want to call it a crusade, is really we would benefit from marketing things in a way. You had a paper, which I've sent to so many colleagues and people over the years now, is what is the exact title?
How do we sell exercise?
So people want to buy it. So patients want to buy it. And you have this prescription in there, and I honestly use that prescription when I'm starting off with someone. It's what are the good things that you're hoping to get from movement in your life? Is it more energy and vitality? Is it better mood? Is it better sleep? Is it connection with people? And you can literally check the boxes because you're following the convention that we write prescriptions, which I think is really important in healthcare. You're right. Clinicians, they speak to each other in a certain way. We always have this joke that anything that's presented to us has to be evidence-based. It's a joke, but it's not. I will say that. And then I will also say a lot of doctors who have the experience of N=1 for their own nutrition or diet, because we didn't get proper education in school, they will then start talking to their patients about unusual diets that aren't based in evidence, but they had benefits from. So you see both things. But anyway, back to your crusade. Because I know you're actually you've designed a curriculum for clinicians to be able to learn how to do this, and there's so many issues with the healthcare system and why it's actually set up not to do this and to create the opposite. So how are you, what have you created and how are you tackling that?
Sure. So thank you for asking about that. I'm super passionate about this. I'm passionate about helping clinicians like you learn how to use that prescription pad because I think it's a simple, easy thing people can do. I've heard from many clinicians that it's completely changed how their patients think about exercise and that they can easily fit it in. They have the patients fill it out when they're typing up their notes, and then they take a picture of it and can upload it into the EMR. But what you're asking me about is the certification program. And back in February 1994, when I had that insight that I was going to learn how to solve this problem, I got a second master's degree to really understand how do you design programming that will work long term and how do you evaluate it. So I designed a program in the 90s that I delivered and I taught other people how to deliver. And then when I went back to get my PhD, I tabled that for a while. And over the years, when I deliver this curriculum, people say the same thing at the same point. And it's because we've been socialized or indoctrinated, if we want to go back to the word we started talking about earlier, that Po you used too, to think about exercise in a very narrow way. And that's negative, but it's a positive when it comes to behavior change, because that means I can design curriculum that doesn't have to have 20 different pathways. I need to just have 2 or 3 pathways because those are the only pathways that really exist when it comes to exercising. And so seeing how consistently this system works and how it helps people in a very systematic way convert exercise from a chore into a gift, I just finally got to a point, it was been a bucket list item for me to scale the method. And so I have I'm almost done designing a train the trainer program so that I can systematically teach clinicians and health coaches and other types of professionals and psychologists how to deliver this program or curriculum so that they can consistently have the same results that I have seen and that I've seen others have too when they've learned my systems. So that's what I'm doing. And you're right. I am on a crusade. And that's what happened in 1994. The crusade happened then. But if you would have told me it would have taken 15, 20 years for people to really take these ideas seriously, I probably wouldn't have had the gumption to keep going. When I first started and submitted abstracts to conferences like the American College of Sports Medicine, I got rejected because my ideas were not aligned with the popular science of the day, with the theories that everyone was using. And when I was invited in 2017 to do a president's lecture at the American College of Sports Medicine, again, like the exercise organization, I was like, oh my God, from getting the door slammed in my face again and again to a couple of decades later, it just shows you that it takes time for new thinking to be accepted, to be able for the culture to be at a place where they're like, okay, I'm ready to say that this approach doesn't work for most people. And if I can honestly take that stand, then where else do I look? What other theories are there? And yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that, I guess it's been 30 years, like you can tell there's a progression, but like even more recently, do you find that people are more receptive to this, that you're actually seeing like maybe locally where you are partnering with clinicians who are implementing these like marketing, basically movement in a different way?
Yes. Oh, huge. And I don't think I have, back in the 90s and early 2000s when I spoke to clinicians, I bumped up against a lot of pushback. People were very angry at what I was suggesting, that they didn't need to follow the doctor's prescription and that patients shouldn't be trying to hit a certain threshold. And I bumped up against a lot of anger. But now I can honestly say I never, whether I'm talking to health coaches, MDs, nurse practitioners, personal trainers, because you know why? Because at this point in 2024, anyone who's had any type of significant experience working with individuals and trying to help them change their lifestyle behaviors, they know that most people do not succeed and that the approaches that most professionals have been taught are ineffective for long-term change. So I'm very hopeful because I feel like there is a new receptiveness to the need for a different way.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So in my journey with health and fitness, I feel like that's why I was like excited to talk to you, because I've had opportunities in controlled environments to be able to get healthy, right? I would say lose weight. I'll say that because that's exactly what I thought, or that's what I signed up for, was the weight loss. So my mindset will go back to 2011. I had an opportunity to lose weight and I did. I accomplished that. After a certain amount of time, I started slowly getting back into my old habits. You know what I mean? Whatever that may be, whether I was just focused on work, focused on other things, my health started not being the top priority. And then I started slowly getting but I maintained that all the things that I've learned were all there, but I noticed my behavior started going back. I wouldn't say going back, but I started getting comfortable again with instead of going out and running and working out. I guess my question is, with all your experience, what would couple things pointers that you could give those of us who are like, that are struggling? I do really well, and then I notice that things start to set back again. And obviously, I'm not even going into like injuries that also affect your mindset and your attitude and the lens and all these things. I feel like for me, that's what's always been issues, is like sustaining Achilles tear and then knee injury and then all these things that just stack up. And then before you're just like, oh man, now you're really into that failure mindset where you don't see the big picture anymore, like where it's like a lifestyle, completely different lifestyle. So anyways, what would you say to that for people out there that are like, how do we get going again? And what can I do different this time?
Yes, that's such an important question. And the injury, that's really in a class by itself. Although, because when you're injured, you really do have to do the things that are going to help you heal. And sometimes that means really staying off something. And sometimes it means we think we are supposed to stay off, but really doing a little bit might be better. And that should be doctor decided in partnership with a healthcare provider who knows what is needed. But also, as someone who has been injured a lot, not because I've done extreme things, but just because it's the way it is, I used to totally stop, and for months. And I've learned over the years through my own experience that, well, taking little walks, it may not feel good, but I'm actually not hurting myself and I'm maintaining some level of strength. And so I think there's this combination of personal wisdom that comes from these experiences that we think are really bad when we're injured, but actually over time, they can teach us to be smarter. And hopefully we have these periods before we get in the more later years when it's even harder to recover from injuries. So maybe we're better at preventing them when we're older. That's one thing. But getting back to the bigger question, which is starting and stopping and going back into old habits. And I will just come back to my formula. And the formula is that your reason for wanting to do these behaviors, your why, has to be deeply compelling and relevant to daily life. Weight loss is not relevant and compelling to daily life. Better health in 20 years is not relevant and compelling to daily life. What is? Energy levels, mood, patience with our family, creativity at work. What are the reasons or whys that are going to make this compelling? What are the ways of doing the behavior? If you are going to the gym and killing yourself on a piece of equipment that you actually don't enjoy doing, that is a recipe for not sustaining. So picking activities, and you say, but I'm not going to get as good of a workout if I walk outside than if I run on the treadmill. The best exercise is the one you're going to keep up, period. So we've got to change what we think we should be doing away from doing it in the best, most potent way to doing it in the way that is most going to align with our preferences and our daily life context. If you're in an extreme period at work, and that might mean that either if you're wanting to start to exercise or your exercise the way you're doing it has to change, you've got to go, wait a sec, I'm in this intense, like an accountant during tax season. Their life has to be like 100%. So for a regular exerciser who's an accountant, I bet accountants either shrink what they do or they know how much they get from their exercise and how much it helps them focus and do their job well, that they're like, I can't compromise this. And they're not going to stop because maybe they get up earlier, which is a hard thing to do when you're exhausted. But if they know it's their fuel. So that's getting back to what is going to make this stuff so compelling, and doing it to get healthy or lose weight just doesn't embed with these the daily decisions that underlie sustainable change with a deeply compelling priority that is going to keep us choosing day in and day out. So I like to help people think about like an experiment. And I also think another problem is people often change their eating and try to exercise at the same time. That is a problem for most people. I ask people to pick one behavior and only one, because sustainability requires that we understand what's going to get in the way and that we develop really effective navigation or negotiation tactics to prevent them or avoid them or overcome them or transcend them. And you can't do that with two behaviors. You need focus. So only focus on one thing. Don't eat healthy. Don't try to eat healthy and start to exercise at the same time. It's too much. It's just too much for most people.
I want to actually come back to something you said earlier. That was really like interesting. And Po, actually, does that resonate with you?
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
It really does.
I mean, I was hearing it. I remember because you've talked about like how you exercised a lot in 2010, 2011. Michelle, by the way, he was on a reality TV show.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where he was like competing and actually like almost won. And then you came back, Po, and you were exercising like for several hours a day.
It was like 6 hours a day.
Wow.
Right.
Total.
Which is
and then like
right.
in the high intensity spin workouts, boot camps.
Yeah, it was never sustainable.
No, it wasn't.
And never sustainable.
Yeah.
And he had 3 kids. And so I think you've learned a lot, obviously, since then. But it goes back to what you said at the beginning, Michelle, which is oftentimes people just aren't planning for what is doable and possible in their life at the present moment. Like they have some idea of what they should be doing, or somebody else is telling them what they should be doing. It always comes back to, what can I do? And my big takeaway from your teachings has also been just, and you said it already, like when you talked about like just even dancing in the living room for 6, like it should feel like the movement should feel good. It should feel joyful. I was one of those people that around my birthday and around New Year's, I would go to the big box gym that I had a membership to that I never used. And I would stand in line for a treadmill, and I would do that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks until I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like that's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah. It's so people start usually around some cue, New Year's, summer, wedding, whatever, some kind of event. And they basically, okay, I've got to achieve this goal, this outcome. I'm just going to do this exercise. It sounds like a good thing. But in order to sustain something, it's a lifelong relationship. Sustainability is forever. So if you think about, most people don't just marry someone. I think it's time to get married. You look like a good fit. Come on, let's run to the chapel. No. So
do a little bit of homework.
Testing the waters.
Experiment. You said it earlier. You say experimenting.
I mean, dating is experimenting. And so if we looked at a behavior change, a lifestyle behavior change as a lifelong relationship that we want to have, or think about career. Most people don't just close their eyes and put a chart on the wall that have all these different professions and then go, ooh, I'm going to be a social worker. We put thought in, we shadow people, we do assessments. Really, a lifetime change, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but we've got to put more energy into making sure that the direction we want to go in really does reflect something that reflects who we are and how we want to spend our time and what our preferences are. And that's really one of the big problems, is that we've been taught to do it instead of to figure out what is the best thing for us.
I think you're highlighting actually an inherent deficiency in our healthcare system, which is that it doesn't encourage or create space for those conversations where people are learning, like thinking about what are my values. And actually, even like you said before that, it's their beliefs and their conception of their identity. And that is something, when does a doctor or anyone in healthcare talk to their patient about their underlying beliefs about themselves and fitness and health? And that conversation never happens. So I don't know. I wonder your thoughts on that.
Sense of the evolution of things is that hopefully health coaches who are becoming more and more, the reimbursement of health coaching is becoming more regular. I think health coaches are a great partner, because clinicians you guys have official time limits that you're supposed to keep within, and it makes it really hard to do this other stuff that we're talking about. So if health coaches could be the designated professional to help patients do that. That would be a perfect thing. But the health coaches have to be trained in the right systems too. So if health coaches are trained in a system that perpetuates some of the things we've been talking about, or it doesn't harness what the most on target science is about sustainable change, then they will only be that effective. We need to make sure that.
Yeah, we've had several health coaches on and continue to, for the exact reasons you're saying. And one of the things that's come out is, and I've had to think about this a lot, is like the clinical goals won't necessarily, oftentimes don't align with the patient's goals.
Right.
And so and to see ongoing success and sustainable change that ultimately will lead to the clinical goals, you have to start with the patient goals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know Victor Montori's work?
No, but tell us about it.
Oh, you have to look up his work. So he's part of, and I don't remember the name of his colleague, and I apologize for that. They developed a system called at Mayo called minimally disruptive medicine. And it is based on making sure that the treatment has to align with the life realities of the patient. And I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if they also got into the values of the patients, but it's really all about there's this, again, it gets back to this gold standard, which creates all or nothing. This is the ideal. Patients should be doing X, Y, Z. But if patient's life only can accommodate half of A and none of B and 3/4 of Z, that's better than nothing. But the healthcare system, there's compliance. It's complicated in healthcare but the reality is that in many cases, though I'm not a medical doctor, I assume that doing something is better than nothing in many cases. Now, that's not true with antibiotics, right? If you start an antibiotic, you better finish it or that's going to promote resistance and all that. But with other things.
But for lifestyle behaviors, for sure. Something is always going to be better than nothing. Yeah.
I just really, what you were saying, it for me, moving forward, I sustained a knee injury earlier last year. And you were just talking about, right now, all I can do is walk. And it's a little walk. It's not a crazy walk. But I went on one last night and I was thinking, man, and then just this conversation reinforced that. In my mind, I'm thinking of rehab. I got to be able to get on this bike. I got to do all these things. And it's just, honestly, if I can just walk twice a day, every day, that's good enough for where I'm at. You know what I mean? And I feel like it just removes that win or loss mindset and just gets in man, I enjoy those walks. I really do. I enjoy the fresh air, like the things that I'm feeling and then the thought I'm thinking about stuff.
Focusing on the experiences you're having. And all I can do is just take a walk, right? It's not just a walk. It's a gift that you can do that. And when you can start to hone in on how it makes you feel, you change the paradigm. And just based on what you said, this is a true story. After No Sweat came out and someone came up to me and told me a story about visiting her uncle, and he was going through chemotherapy, and she was asking him how it was going and how he was feeling. And he said, my doctor wants me to exercise. And she said, are you doing that? He said, all I can do is walk around the block. So why bother? That mentality is what's getting in people's way. So that is the mentality we've got to break. And that's where something is better than nothing. And understanding why is it that we feel that way, that somehow just walking outside and not working out really hard on a bike when you have an injury isn't something to be celebrated.
And I think this conversation has now made me more aware of my mindset. Where my mindset is refocusing, man, I do enjoy walking, and I don't know why I don't feel like that's not good enough, is what we were talking about earlier. And I need to meet, you were talking earlier about the sort of personal wisdom that you have within your own body, like how you feel and, think what makes you feel good. Like, I really just got to get back to just meeting myself where I'm at.
Yeah.
Versus trying to think too far ahead. And it's just like going back to being present, because I enjoy I really do. It's not like I'm not doing like a mile or anything, but it's enough for me to get outside and my mind changes a little bit. Like I don't feel bad coming like at home, not being able to go do other types of things. But if I can just be okay with going for a walk and just saying, that was good and that was good. And then slowly, obviously, as I feel better and start progressing, then that's better too. So I think this conversation was something that I needed to hear today, because I was like thinking, man, if I can just master walking, I just focus in on what my body is feeling when I'm walking a certain amount of distance. And it's not even about that. It's just the idea of just getting outside and
what about instead of mastering walking? Because in a way that that's like an achievement frame. What if instead of mastering walking, you could just enjoy walking?
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Experience walking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Experience walking. That's after I read The Joy Choice, I said to myself, okay, my value is to get some movement in every day. That's how I'm going to frame this from now on.
Yes.
Last week, all sorts of things happened, and I didn't do my regular X, Y, and Z workouts. But I remember my kids came home from school and we went to the track. Like, there's a track near our house. We went to the field and we played tag.
Nice.
And that was my movement after school. It was awesome. It was really great. And there's all sorts of versions of tag that I didn't know about. Like when I was a kid, zombie tag, and I don't even remember now, banana tag. That's really shifted. It's really shifted things for me. Like I would have in the past been like, oh, I didn't work out today. And it's, no, you got movement in today. That was your goal. And you felt really good doing it. And you got to connect with your sons. There's so much wisdom there. Yeah. There's so much wisdom there.
And I just like going back to what we're talking about, I really feel like, there's some mindset shifts that I need to do within myself. Right. You know what I mean? Didn't even like totally subconsciously didn't realize I said like mastering. And even that's what I'm saying. It's going to take time to retrain your brain. Yes. You know what I mean? Into looking at in a perspective. Yeah. Like you said, Rock, like just experience the walk, whether that you feel the way your body feels, what's around you, whatever you're seeing, instead of saying.
And Po, you've been doing walks for a month now, or like even, so have you noticed any difference? Like the walk last night, how did that compare to the walk 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Way better. Like last night, it was like I was on a pace. It wasn't like I was going fast, but I felt like I was walking at a different speed than when I first started going out. I could feel more of the aches and the pain. But this time last night, it was like smell. I was just noticing fresh air. And then my thought, and then that's the other thing. It's also another way to get out of your mind. A lot of times you're thinking about all kinds of things, but just getting outside, it was just, but I do feel like the walks are definitely, and even now I'm thinking, man, like I should be it should be intentional about the experience of walking. That should be the intention.
Yes.
I mean,
right? Versus it has to be, how fast am I doing it? When is it going to be done? The mindset really does have to change. And it's sustainable.
But also, let's think about what you get. So I used to be a runner, and I wasn't a fast runner, but I loved to run. And then my knees became problematic, and so I'm a walker now. And I like walking outside, not necessarily in woods. I like to see trees, but I don't like to be I know that I don't like as much. So I walk outside and I just get to enjoy the expansive feeling. And I don't walk that fast, but I might walk. My typical walk might be 40 to 60 minutes on any given day. And so then a while back, I decided, I need to look into bone promoting. Like how can I walk in a way that's really going to produce the best bone health? And what I learned was that if I picked up the pace and had higher impact, that would be better for my bones. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I started walking faster, and it really reduced my desire to go outside. It reduced my experience and my enjoyment of this holistic activity. So the walk isn't just good for whatever physiological changes. It's a gift that I'm giving myself into my day, and it contributes to my self-care and how I feel and my mood. And I pretty much decided I will be seriously compromising my quality of life if I try to do this kind of walk on most days. Like I had, but again, it totally aligns with what I've been preaching all along.
I love that you were turning your movement into a chore.
Yes.
Like, it just shows that everyone does it.
Yes.
I think it's in your mind. Like it's a cultural training thing that I think totally. Yes.
No, and my husband, who's known me for a long time, and you're not going to keep that up, you know? And I'm like, I care about this. But you know,
it's so good for me. Don't you know how good it is?
Yeah, but it is. This is just, again, there are some people who, once I gave a talk, this was a really long time ago. And I was saying, this was in the 90s, and I was talking about how important it was for people to exercise in ways that felt good. And this was when people were getting mad at me. And this woman stood up in the audience and she said, I have been swimming every day for 40 years and I hate it. And she was using herself as an example of why I was wrong. And my response to her was, there are a subset of people in this world who have the incredible discipline and wherewithal and organization. They can push through anything and do it. But the majority of us mere mortals do not have that energy and discipline. And so I'm not saying you should stop swimming even though you hate it. What I am saying is if people have tried to do something that they hate and they can't keep it up, the solution is to shift from doing something you hate to something that you like, or at least is palatable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've encountered people like that too, who like, they'll say, no, actually, like I do something every day and I don't enjoy exercise and I still do it every day. And I say, good for you. You're the minority.
Yes.
If everyone could do that, we wouldn't have the rates of chronic disease we have, and people can't. Right. Most people can't. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I know we're getting close to the end of our time.
We are getting, we usually end with one final question. Po, you want to do the honors?
Sure. So this is the Health Feast, and we like to say, if you were coming to our house for a feast, what kind of health philosophy, any kind of advice that you would give, and that would be what you would be bringing to our Health Feast.
I'm trying to decide. I don't know that I've talked enough about this to really have it sink in, but I think I'll just say it anyway. I would ask people when they can't do what they had hoped for or planned to do, that they pick the joy choice. And because we didn't talk about it enough, I'm just going to define it. The joy choice is the perfect, imperfect option that lets us do something instead of nothing when our plan bumps up against the unexpected. And it's called the joy choice because, like you said so frequently, Po, it strips away any sense of success or failure. Really, anything's a success because it is you doing something that reinforces that you're supporting your greater health and well-being goals, but in a way that creates harmony with the other parts of your lives. We can't control when our boss comes in and says, I need you to do this by 5. And that means you can't take a walk around the track like you had planned for. We can't prevent our kids from getting sick and us needing to go to the school and have to pick them up and miss our exercise class at the gym. But what we can do is we can flex and be creative and figure out what are the options that I can play with today? Is it doing the same thing for a quarter of the amount of time? Is it running around with my kids? Is it doing something tomorrow, which I hadn't planned to because today just isn't going to work out? That's what I would advise for people to pick the joy choice and then to just feel really fantastic about whatever that is.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here with us. I think today's conversation has really struck a chord with me. I'm doing some reflection and I like the joy choice. I feel like not only does that apply to my health and fitness, but I almost think it can apply to almost any, whether it's a career choice, whether it's a relationship you're in, right? I feel like you can apply it to almost all aspects of your life. And so I really want to thank you for giving us this time and sharing a little bit of your story, a little bit of your philosophies, and educating myself on seeing life as in a different lens and being flexible.
Thank you. And thank you both for having me. It's just been a pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah. Wow. This has been a dream, I said, but actually the actual conversation lived up to the hype in my head. No, it was wonderful to learn. And I'm so happy that you are on this crusade, because this is also my mission, and honestly Poe's mission too, is to change healthcare so that we actually focus on health and help people live their best life. And you have just hit on something so fundamental to do that I speak your work from the rooftops. I think everybody needs to hear about it, and getting you on the show and having this conversation will just be another way that we can spread this message. So thank you so much for coming today. Yeah. All right. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you back here next time. And Michelle, we do our requisite fist bump to the camera. Everyone. Nice. All right. Boom. We got it.